The following presentation was recorded live for the International Association of Square Dance Callers 21st Annual Convention. This is tape number 26, BMI ASCAP, and Insurance Program Update.
If you have any questions, in order to get it on a tape, please step to the microphone in the center of the room there so that we get your words on tape. There's nothing more exciting than the Callers Association sitting around listening to one of these tapes with 5 minutes of dead air in the middle of it. Okay, I think we can start. This is the session on the BMI and ASCAP update, as well as an update of the CALLERLAB Group Liability Insurance. I am George White, the Executive Secretary of CALLERLAB. Please do not construe what you hear today as a formal legal opinion. This is our opinion of the insurance and the music performance licenses as we best understand it. I have been the chief negotiator with BMI and ASCAP, so I am the closest to the agreement myself. That's why I was chosen to do this session. I will start out by giving you some general guidelines about our BMI and ASCAP agreements. Then I'll talk to you just very briefly about our insurance coverage, and I hope to leave plenty of time at the end for your questions about either of those situations. For purposes of this discussion, let me give you a definition the way we also understand that. Line and or solo dancing is not a part of country western dancing. Some people refer to line dancing as country lines, or they assume line dancing to be country western dancing. For purposes of this discussion and for the purposes of our agreement with BMI and ASCAP, line dancing has existed in the square dance activity for well over 30 years and should not be construed to be equal to country western dancing. For our purposes here, country western dancing is the teaching or conducting of Texas two-step, Texas 10-step, schottish, country waltz, and those kinds of dance steps. So when I say that country western is or is not covered, I'm talking about that part of country western dancing, not line and solo dancing. Are there any questions about that part? On an understanding of what is country western and what is not as far as the CALLERLAB is concerned. Okay, what is covered with the license you purchased from CALLERLAB? We do have a question.
Can you define a little bit better the difference? If you dance solo, say, for instance, an 18-wheeler or something like that, that you can do by yourself, that's considered a line dance. But if you get a partner, then you are in a country western dance. Is that how we define it?
Not being involved in the activity that much, to me, line and solo dancing means the same thing. It is usually an individual person dancing, even though the step that you dance is the same as everyone else in the hall is doing. You're doing your own thing, like you did in the mashed potatoes and the monkey and the frog and things like that. You were on your own. The only thing is, then you weren't doing the same footsteps as everyone else.
Okay, so anytime you get a group, like in a circle or two couples, then that is not covered by solo dancing. Is that correct?
That's correct. I would not call that a line dance. Now I realize that in some areas now they are line dancing in couples. Is that correct? You actually touch someone else when you're doing the line dance. That I'm going to have to leave up to each individual to decide what you would call a line dance and what you would call a solo dance versus what you would call a country western dance. If we did it 30 years ago to the Little Black Book, to the Amos Moses, that is definitely a line and a solo dance. If you do the one you just mentioned, the 18-wheeler, I'm not familiar with that, so I don't know how you dance that. Okay? So we're going to have to leave a lot of these things up to your definition, which is not a problem with BMI and ASCAP. What is covered? All square dance activities except state or national conventions. A state convention or a national convention must get their own BMI and ASCAP licenses to protect the convention. Now, I have heard many reports of state conventions especially that have been given an exoneration by BMI and or ASCAP. The Minnesota State Convention last year, for instance, contacted both BMI and ASCAP in order to obtain what they thought they needed for a license. BMI and ASCAP both looked at the size of the state convention and the number of callers that were registered to call and said, you don't need to buy an additional license. You're adequately covered by the number of callers that are here. So that has to be played individually with your state association or the National Association as to whether or not BMI and or ASCAP will forgive you of getting the actual convention license. What is included is all your regular club dances, your classes, your workshops, your special dances such as fundraising dances, benefit dances, subscription dances, and things like that. It covers weekends, hoedowns, jamborees, fun nights, festivals, demonstrations, parades, nursing homes, shopping malls, county and state fairs, street dances, and so forth. In other words, if you have invented a name for your square dance event, it's covered. You can call it a fun night or a party night or a weekend. Whatever name you invent, you are licensed to perform copyrighted music at that function. One-night stands are covered. The only time you are not covered is if the facility that you are performing in already has a license. Then it is their license that covers the event, not yours. Let's take an example of a parade. A local Lions Club, the local civic authority, anyone sponsors a parade and asks you to put a float in the parade. If the parade officials have not taken the time to get a BMI and ASCAP license because they didn't know they were supposed to, then your event is still licensed because you have a license. If the parade officials did contact BMI and ASCAP and buy a license for their parade, your license isn't any good. But you're covered because you're covered by the parade license. It's not important only because that's the wording in the agreements that BMI and ASCAP sell, not only to us, but to all other organizations as well. Originally in copyright law, it was the facility that was licensed. People were not as mobile as we are today. If you went to a Grange Hall out in the country on Saturday night for a dance, the Grange Hall was licensed. Even up through the Second World War, if you went to a local VFW, American Legion, any bar or saloon, they held the license. It was only when instructors and teachers became mobile and began moving around to different facilities that it became a better idea to license the performers rather than to license the facility. And in this day and age, with the country western dance teachers moving from place to place, square dance callers moving from place to place, jazzercise and exercise teachers teaching one night for the school system, one night for the Park and Rec Department, one night for the YMCA, it became easier and more convenient to license the performer of the music rather than to license the musician, the band, or the facility that the event was occurring in. So if you could hold off for just a minute, I may cover some of these things. What is covered is square dancing, round dancing, line or solo dancing, clogging, classes, and so forth. So if you feel that the activity has been a part of the square dance activity for years, 10 years, 5 years, or whatever, then it's covered. So a lot of people will tell you we don't cover clogging. What happened when music license first became important, there was no way for just clogging teachers to get a license. So CALLERLAB accepted, I believe, 12 clogging instructors. And for 1 year, we licensed them to cover clogging. By the end of that year, the network, an organization of cloggers, had obtained an agreement also from BMI and ASCAP, so now clogging instructors could be licensed through that organization. Our agreement still covers clogging. If you happen to be a clogging instructor and a contra teacher and a traditional teacher and a square dance caller, it's all lumped under your one license. What is not covered is country western dancing as we defined it earlier on the tape here. The Texas two-step, the 10-step, the schottisch, the country waltz, whatever other names that country western steps go by. let me point out that dance professionals tell me that there has been no new footstep invented since 1945. Every step that is today defined in country western is also defined in the round dance phases or the round dance rhythms by CALLERLAB. So is country western a new activity, or has it been with us all this time under a different name? BMI and ASCAP say it's new. What they are concerned about is not the kind of dance we do to the music, but the kind of music we use to do the dance. Probably 90% of country western dancing is done to pop records. Records that were made by well-known record producers, by well-known country western artists. 10% of their music is music that's in the public domain. Music that is old enough to be out of copyright, but still popular country western type music. 90% of the music used in square dancing is not pop record music. It's music produced by hi-hat, ESP, rhythm, Sting, Royal Records, or whatever. The arrangements and the music are not done by important or high-paid country western artists. They're done by square dance callers. BMI and ASCAP both feel that you should pay more for a license to use popular records than to use the kind of records that we use as square dance callers. That's why there's a basic difference between teaching country western dances and teaching square dances. Okay? As far as BMI is concerned, any country western dancing that you do as part of a square dance event is covered. If you want to teach country western dance as part of your square dance evening, you are covered. Now, what is a country western dance during a square dance event? Look at it like a round dance. If you do typically a patter call, a singing call, and a round dance, and instead you do a patter call, a singing call, and a country western dance, you're covered. If you do country western dances 8 times and then call one square dance tip, you're trying to get through a loophole, right? You're trying to call it a square dance activity when it really isn't. Your prime purpose was to teach country western dancing. So for BMI, you are covered if you do country western dancing at a square dance event. We have not yet gotten ASCAP to agree to that. Now, I can't honestly tell you that go out and find yourself some BMI music and use that. Hang in there. We're still negotiating with. In fact, I have tried to call Ken Hayward at ASCAP 3 times since I've been here at this convention, and I've been unable to get a response from him by phone. I hope to have this all wrapped up by now. We just have not been able to reach a full agreement with ASCAP yet. Okay, Chuck?
You say we're covered when we do round dancing, but in round dancing we also use a lot of pop records too. Oh, okay.
That's very true. However, CALLERLAB has kept that very quiet. From BMI and ASCAP don't know the extent of the popular record use in round dancing. I hate to say that on this tape. I hope you won't take this tape home and spread it around, tell everybody that. But that's basically why, is that they've been very careful not to let out that information.
I can ask my question.
Yes, you can ask your question now.
You said we're covered in a lot of places. You went through a lot of this. But it used to be that when we went into malls, we used to go into malls and no problem. Then BMI ASCAP came around, and the malls got scared, and nobody could perform at all in the malls because the malls didn't have coverage. Now we have coverage. I think you're saying that we can go back into the malls, and if the mall is not covered and another group gets kicked out, we're still covered because we are under our...
Right,
okay,
but the other group
is...
is...
I understand that.
Should you meet in one end of the mall with a square dance event, and they have a 5-piece orchestra in the other end of the mall, they're not covered. You are. Your license doesn't cover them down the other end of the mall. Yes?
Yes, I have, since I started calling, been teaching line dancing as a tool to teach dancers to dance to the music. And I've recently moved to a small town in the middle of Arizona, and they've had country and western and line dancing being taught through the community college. And the person who's been doing it doesn't want to do it anymore, so they come and ask me to do it. And I told them I'm not interested in country and western stuff, but I could teach you line dancing. But it won't be in a square dance activity, and we do use popular music. So that's my question. Will I be covered then?
You can teach line dancing or round dancing or square dancing at any kind of event you want to. You are covered for teaching those things. Just be careful not to include a country western two-step as part of that teaching. Okay? Now, it's not that we're not going to be able to license you to do country western steps. We have an agreement already in place with BMI. We do not have an agreement in place yet with ASCAP. If you taught country western alone and you joined the National Teachers Association, you would pay a fee of, let me see here, $71 to BMI, which would allow you to teach country western dancing to up to 66 students a week. If you purchased a license from ASCAP for $41.30, you could teach up to 75 students a week. So what this really says is for a $112 license, you can teach up to 66 students a week. What we have done with BMI, and this is firm, it isn't signed yet, but I have an agreement between CALLERLAB and BMI that once you have purchased the CALLERLAB license, the BMI portion of that is $30 for less than 50 dances a year, $40 for over 50 dances a year. For an additional $31, you will be covered for teaching country western music. So instead of buying a completely different NTA license, you're just paying the difference between the CALLERLAB license and the NTA license. So we're calling it a surcharge, and it's a surcharge of $31 then. So for $31 more than your CALLERLAB license, you can teach as much country western as you want. One of the agreements we got with him is to not tie it to the number of students per week any longer. It's a flat rate, basically. You can teach as many students as you can get in front of you.
And then when you agree with ASCAP, will it be another
It's when
amount?
ASCAP will agree with us.
When ASCAP will agree with you, it will be another amount of money on top of the $31.
That's correct. But the ASCAP fee today is only about half of what the BMI fee is anyway. To the NTA, it's $71 from BMI and $41.30 from ASCAP, roughly half. ASCAP has agreed with the American College Association for a flat rate of $50 for country western teaching. That is on top of the ACA's already licensed fee, okay? We are trying to get just the difference between that $50 flat rate and the $41 that you have already paid ASCAP with your CALLERLAB license. In other words, we're trying for that $9 more. Right now I don't hold out very high hopes that we're going to get the $9, but I'm pretty confident we will get quite a bit less than the $50. Question?
I don't know if it's just me or if anyone else is confused too. I guess where I'm getting confused is I'm hearing the term line dances and country western dances, and I think you may have talked about the distinction between them, but when I'm hearing you say at a square dance event, if between tips we can do something and we're covered, what is that something? Is it country western dances? Is it line dances? And is there any way you can, again, distinguish clearly for us what the difference is between the two?
There really isn't a clear difference, only to say that line dancing and solo dancing have been done at square dance events for well over 30 years. Right? We've always done the chicken, the Amos Moses, the Hully Gully, the Bossa Nova. 30 years ago we were doing line dances that had names like that. Today the names have changed, the footsteps are the same. Right? That is a line dance. A country western dance is a two-step, Texas two-step, 10-step, 16-step, whatever are those couple dances that you teach. Right. Yeah. If it's done not as a couple, it's probably a line dance. From BMI, you're allowed to do any of it at a square dance event. You can teach anything. You can teach a schottisch, a polka, a country waltz at a square dance event. As long as you don't try to break the system by saying, well, this is a square dance event, but you only do one square dance all night long. The rest of them, you've got to be fair with BMI and ASCAP as well, and they'll try to be fair with us. Question?
Yes, I come from a small town, and every year we have what we call a street fair. I know that I'm covered, which we do square dancing there on 2 different days. But I got to thinking, and I asked the people who's putting this on, Chamber of Commerce, and they don't know whether they're covered with any of their other activities or not, because they've never heard of BMI or ASCAP before.
That's very true.
And so I'm wondering, on just information only, are students exempt from this, school people exempt from this, school people?
No.
They're not?
No.
I understood they were.
No, they don't. They will, but you have to be pretty unwilling to deal with them. If you are at a square dance, a country western dance, any kind of a dance, and BMI and or ASCAP representative happens to drop in, they will first ask if anyone at the event has a license. If the club has a license, if the facility has a license, if you have a license, they'll say thank you and they'll leave.
Would my license cover this whole thing?
Depends on what you mean by the whole thing. If in another room someone is doing some other
dancing,
is
out in the street.
Your license will cover the facility, the club, the organization that's sponsoring it, and or yourself, as long as it is a square dance activity or a square dance event. They don't cover wedding receptions and things like that. No. They cover square dance events.
What I was talking about, there's going to be other entertainment there besides square dancing.
No, the square dancing is covered by you.
All right, that's what I wanted to find out.
Yeah. Line dancing is covered by you.
Yeah.
Contra and traditional dancing is covered by you. Round dancing is covered by you. But if it's a band playing, or, which is even more common, or was, somebody comes in with a karaoke machine or a disc jockey.
Yeah.
Your license does not cover those people. Or a vocal group, right? If they ask a local men's chorus or someone to come in and sing, that's not covered.
That's what I wanted to find out, because we have a lot of entertainment. This goes on this every year, and I don't want our town to get in trouble the way it is.
Right. Let me get back a minute to the point of the BMI or ASCAP walk-in, and if any of you, the organization, the club, the facility, or you have a license, they'll say thank you and they'll leave. If no one has a license, they will offer to sell you one. If you are a square dance caller, they are well aware of us now. They know about CALLERLAB, and they'll try to sell you first because you are the least expensive licenses that can be purchased. If for some reason you don't want to purchase the license, or the club doesn't want to purchase one for you, then they will sell a club license to the sponsor of the event, which is basically BMI and ASCAP $22 for the night. Would you please put it on the mic so that we can...
I do belong to the Chamber of Commerce in our town, and that still wouldn't cover all the other things.
No, this license is for square dancing and square dance related activities. Okay? We consider line dancing, round dancing, and now country western dancing a part of the square dance activity.
Okay.
Jim?
George, I think one thing that ought to be pointed out is that if you're not using ASCAP music or BMI music, this license doesn't mean anything to you. You have to be using their music. And we suggest for the line dancing and for a lot of the couple dances that you look into using some of the square dance singing calls, which are not registered with ASCAP or BMI, and you don't have to worry about it.
The problem is finding out which ones are BMI and which ones are not BMI or ASCAP.
Well, the square dance music isn't either one.
I'm sorry, it is. My reading of BMI and ASCAP, regardless of whether the music is produced by a square dance record producer, it is a licensable song.
The Attorney General of the United States has said that their copyright does not go when you have a Harry Fox license from the composer to redo that music.
This is not the place to discuss that, Jim.
But that's the truth.
No. I have absolutely no proof of that. Nothing written. Should I receive something written to that effect someday, we will certainly investigate it. We know of no way today to bypass the requirement of BMI and ASCAP licensing for square dance callers.
I have a question. I'm helping square dancers plan a festival in May, and we have 3 days of dancing, and on Saturday night we have an invitation out to country western dancers to come and join us and to have an hour of country western, and then we hope to introduce them to square dancing. Now I have to book the caller that's going to do the country western. Does that person, can we get, they're all, the 2 callers I have booked are already are CALLERLAB members. Now, what extra would they have to pay in order to be advertised as country western?
Right now, because we don't have an agreement with ASCAP, those callers would pay us, CALLERLAB, $50 for, so we would hold in trust to give to ASCAP, and $31 that we would hold in trust to give to BMI, and that caller then would be licensed to do country western at your festival.
But would it be only for the festival, or could they be licensed for all year?
Well, they could be licensed for all year.
Yeah. And then if it's less than the 50, you return?
When we finally get an agreement with ASCAP and know the total fees, we will be rebating back to those callers who have already paid us $121 for a country western license. We will be sending them a refund check for the difference in what they really owe us versus what they've already paid to us.
Now you say 121. I thought you said 31 and 50.
That was before the agreement. This agreement happened last week. We have, I think, 12 callers who said, I don't care when you get your agreement, I need to be licensed now.
Yeah.
And in order to be safe, to know how much we might have to give BMI and ASCAP, we collected from them $121.30, I believe, or $112.31. Now that the agreement is in place, as soon as we get an agreement with ASCAP, we will be refunding to those callers the difference between what they really owe us versus what we've collected from them to make sure that they are licensed for what they're doing.
Okay. We have another section of this festival on the next day that we advertise as Introduction to Line Dancing. Is that okay under just the caller?
That's covered by both the BMI and the ASCAP license, or the CALLERLAB license.
Now, somebody who has a country western license tells me that he records music on his tape recorder and uses it, and it looks like this question and answer says you can't do that.
That's correct. You cannot do that.
And well,
we only license the performance of music. Tape recording music is an entirely different license, an entirely different setup. It's done through the Harry Fox Agency in New York, and we, CALLERLAB, cannot license the use of tape-recorded music.
Okay, so
other than as a performer. If you purchase, as any one of you as a square dance caller purchases a tape from any record producer, you have the right to assume that that is a legally produced tape. You can then use that tape as your records, if you will.
That's what I want to do, but I can't find it on the tape, so I put that selection on a little 7-minute tape of my own. Is that illegal?
No, that's not legal either. Now we're talking about a synchronization license. I'm sorry, gang, this is the way it is. If you take any media, record, CD, tape, video, and you put it on another media, you take a CD and put it on an audio tape. You take a record and put it on a CD. You take a record and put it on a videotape. That is the synchronization of rights. And that's another license that comes from the Harry Fox Agency in New York. And there's a lot more to it than just that, too. That's only 2 incidences. The record that you use to put on the tape is probably owned by a square dance record company. He has the rights, the mechanical rights for reproducing that record. You also need his permission to put it on the tape, along with the synchronization license, along with the distribution license. So it's not a cut and dried situation. It's a very complex situation.
Okay, now this has happened in the past, so it probably won't happen to me again. But I was teaching rounds and made a tape of the 12 rounds the dancers had learned, and gave them each copy so they could practice at home. And then somebody said, well, in our isolated area, we can't get a round dance cure for the hoedown, so we played your tapes. Was that okay?
No. Unfortunately, BMI, neither BMI nor ASCAP cares about your problems. All they want to do is license the performance of music, and they don't care whether or not you get paid. They don't care whether or not you do it because you want to be nice to your club. They want to be paid for the performance of music, and they feel that their members are entitled to that payment.
Our club caller is a member of CALLERLAB and has the license, but we have our club member teaches line dancing with using his equipment. Would she be covered?
Let's see. Let me get this right. You're using his equipment.
Yes, in our facility.
But it's only his vocal cords that are licensed. It's not his equipment. It's not his records. It's his vocal cords that we are basically licensing.
So we should, in other words, could get in trouble by her doing instructing. Oh,
yes.
Thank you.
Now let's define trouble. Trouble in your case is a BMI fellow that walks in and asks to see a license and you have none. You pay a fine. Basically, you have to buy the license for that evening, and for ASCAP, I think it's $7.50, and for BMI, it's $15. You pay those licenses, they go home, you're happy, they're happy. But they'll be back tomorrow night, and the night after, and the night after. So you might just as well make arrangements to have license coverage before they can come back and see you a second time.
Okay. As a caller partner, if I cued the lines at a dance or weekend, would it be covered?
Let's back off from the weekend and let's say at a dance. Yes. If your partner is a caller and has a license, pardon?
And he's there, yes.
I'm not hearing.
And he's there.
And he's there, correct. Then you are covered. You can teach lines, you can teach rounds, you can teach contra, you can teach traditional, or cue, and call. All right?
If it's not in the same room, it is not covered?
No, because now we're talking about multiple caller events. Why would you be in a separate room? Is this a square dance event coupled with a round dance event? Or does this square dance event have two halls?
Square dance event has two halls.
Okay, then it is a multiple caller event. They have hired one person to do the rounds in Hall A and another person to do the squares in Hall B. We now have two callers, not just one. And the partner over in Hall B is not covered.
Okay.
Unless there is another caller over there that has a license. Okay.
Well, there's two halls, two callers, and two partners.
Okay. Then the caller protects the hall that he's in, and whichever of the partners is queuing in that hall. The other hall is covered by the other caller, and he covers either of the round dance cuers that happen to be in that hall.
Okay, so even if they set a time for a teach, and the partners are doing the teach, they would be covered? Okay.
That's correct. Jim?
One real quick point. You mentioned that if you don't have a license and ASCAP comes in, they'll have you buy a license. And that's true. They may have it the second time they find you. They may have you buy a second license. If they come back and find you the third time, they aren't going to mess with the license.
That's right. That's right. They're not even going to offer you one. The next thing you will probably see is a court summons.
Year and a half, 2 years ago, I know I contacted CALLERLAB office because we had a question concerning dances with multiple callers and whether all callers had to be licensed or any one. And I remember at that time it was kind of ambiguous. Has that ambiguity been removed now?
We at that time we did not have a sidebar agreement with BMI. We haven't got this yet with ASCAP, but we're working on it. We have finally reached an agreement on what we call multiple caller situations or the amateur night situation. If you are calling a dance, you are licensed, and at that dance is an amateur caller who's just starting, or B, a fellow who is called for 20 years and is retired. They are there primarily as dancers. They didn't come to call, they came to dance, and you're going to give them a slot on your program. They are covered by your license. Be reasonable. If it's a regular dance and there's going to be 8 tips in the evening, don't put on 8 guest callers. I mean, again, you're trying to defeat the system. You're not playing the rules.
But you're saying if there were, for example, a program that had 3 callers for the evening, And they're all regular callers that, in my opinion, they should be licensed, but if one of them is not licensed, you're in trouble. They have to all three be licensed.
He might get away with one tip. He would not get away with 1/3 of the night's program.
Then the other question I had, unrelated, is I've had several people ask me, do I have a copy of the contract? Am I able to get a copy of the contract between CALLERLAB and BMI?
No. You might try to call BMI and ASCAP. They're not available through us. We have a specific agreement with BMI and ASCAP that we are acting as your agents. Therefore, we get the contract, not you. Now, I'll be glad to tell you the words that are in the contract. There's no secrets. There's no fine print or anything in there. I certainly understand that, but by the same token, I don't want to stand the expense of printing 3,000 of them and mailing to 3,000 people, 2,999 of which we're going to throw away and never read it. So call me. I'll be glad to read you any part of the contract over the phone.
Okay, that was part of my question. I was going to ask you what the parameters were, and I asked you before. You haven't got anything cleared up on it yet. But my understanding was if you were in control of the program in your room, you're going to let people do line dancing. You're going to let new callers come in and call at least one tip. But if you're why don't they come under the same heading as the people who are teaching line dancing or controlling line dancing during your program?
You're licensing your partner.
Okay,
you're stretching it if you're covering a hired round dance leader.
Okay, well
that round dance leader deserves to be licensed just like you as a square dance caller is licensed.
When we first got these licenses, basically the idea, or at least the idea I had at that time, as long as you were in control of the program, and it was basically your program, anybody else under you would come covered.
To my knowledge, we, the CALLERLAB office, have never sent anything out that should lead you to believe that. I know it gets distorted as it goes through half a dozen other hands, but we've never sent that information out. Any other questions? There's one coming to the microphone.
Yes, Tim Pratt, San Marcos, California. Down in the San Diego area, I've heard mentioned from some dancers that callers who are licensed through CALLERLAB, there was some question as to whether or not they could do rounds, and there was even a bigger question about doing the latest and greatest country line dance routines and using country music for that purpose. Is there anything at all that we as licensed callers through CALLERLAB cannot do with music?
Can't teach ballet, tap, jazz, baton twirling.
Thank you.
Or those kinds of things. Yeah. When we originally received our license, it said, this is quoting the words right from the contract, said that we were licensed to do square dance, contra, clogging, round dance, and line dance, and contra, and traditional, and modern dancing, as that term is defined by dance professionals. Okay? We sit here and we say, oh, modern dancing. What could be more modern than country western? We must be covered. All right? You call up BMI, who's put the words in the contract, and says, what do you mean by modern dancing as defined by professionals in the activity? And their description of modern dancing is individual expressive dancing, ballet, those kinds of things that you see on TV that is one person expressively telling you a story, a mime, whatever. Modern dancing is not dancing that is modern. Okay? It has its own definition. Adagio, the dancing where the man throws the woman all over the stage, that's called adagio dancing. That's modern dancing. But country western is not modern dancing. We can do modern dancing as defined by dance professionals in the activity, right? We are asking for our new contract to read all dances recognized by dance professionals in the square dance activity be covered. Now, I'm not sure that I've gotten that wording into the contract yet, but that's what I have asked for. Question?
I have a question. Frequently, when we call a dance, there'll be a break in the middle of a dance, and a caller will just sing something, do a sing-along to recorded music. Is that covered, or is that
He is performing to music. He's performing the music.
Thank you.
Very, very fine point. You have a camp out. You call a mainstream or a plus dance for 2.5 hours during the camp out. You break at 11 o'clock. Everyone goes out and sits around the fire. You, the square dance caller, also play the guitar. You go and you sit around the campfire with your friends, play the guitar, and sing. Not covered. It's not a square dance activity. Okay? You can probably get by with that because now you are a person with a circle of friends. Right? A circle of family members or personal friends does not require a license. A wedding reception of 1,000 people does not require a BMI and or ASCAP license because a wedding reception is a gathering of friends. Okay?
I think something else that some of the people don't realize. I think my wife, Betty Welch, has been talking to you quite a bit here the last couple of 3 months about this. She teaches rounds, and I'm a square dance caller and help her. But we found out, and this might be for the information of some other people, through you, I believe, you're somebody back there, that she can buy her license through CALLERLAB cheaper than she could get it through RoundaLab, even though she doesn't work with me all the time. And I think a lot of round dance teachers who have square dance callers and they're working together, they might not realize this, I think. And
the only difference between RoundaLab and CALLERLAB is that RoundaLab, I just found out recently, adds a $5 administrative fee to the license fee. The license cost, the actual cost of what we forward to BMI and ASCAP is identical for CALLERLAB, for RoundaLab, for the American Callers Association. There is no such thing as a discount license. We all three have signed the same agreement. The difference is we add no administrative fee. RoundaLab adds an administrative fee. The ACA has not changed the fee that they report to you because they have deducted that from your dues. 2 years ago, you paid, I think, $20 dues to the ACA, right? And you paid some dollars amount for your BMI and ASCAP license. Today, you pay them the same amount they pay BMI and ASCAP the same amount for the license. It's just that your dues is no longer $20. It's down around $15 now because they have chosen to erode their dues base rather than to increase the cost of the license.
Okay. I wasn't real sure how that worked, but
well, we all pay the same thing to BMI and ASCAP. Okay. It's just how much do we keep in-house as dues, how much do we keep in-house as administrative fees. From CALLERLAB, you get it at cost. What more could you want?
Something just popped into my mind, George, and you probably got an answer because you've been talking to RoundaLab. I know. When you start talking country western dancing, there's no new steps in country western dancing that hasn't been defined by RoundaLab. Yeah. There's only a different rhythm in there, as we talked before. Would we be really stretching it if we did a country western round dance?
I've mentioned this to BMI and ASCAP both. I've told them that RoundaLab has identified every dance step, every rhythm, and it's all included in country western. They're not so concerned about the fact that we call it country western or round dancing. They're concerned with the music that's used to do the dances to. They realize that 90% of the music that country western dancers are used on White House Saloon or Club Dance are popular records. Now, let me back up for just a minute and tell you how the royalties are paid. BMI and ASCAP are not federally controlled organizations any more than CALLERLAB is. They are a private company or a corporation just like CALLERLAB, and and songwriters and arrangers belong to BMI and or ASCAP just like you as callers belong to CALLERLAB. The membership services that BMI and ASCAP offer is to collect royalties from their songs and give to you, the member of BMI and ASCAP. You can be a member of both organizations. You might be a member of BMI this year and of ASCAP next year. You might be a member of ASCAP this year and BMI next year. You can move around where you think the bigger royalties are going to come from. All radio stations, all TV stations in the U.S. report on a monthly basis the names of the songs that they played. They don't report whether they played the song 1,000 times or 10 times. They just report that during this month we played these records. They report that to BMI and ASCAP. BMI and ASCAP then count them, and the people who wrote those songs and wrote those arrangements and produced those records are paid based on how often they were played on the radio. You and I sit here and say, the record that I called last night has never appeared on the radio. Why should anyone get paid for it? All of the royalties that come in as licenses are not given to those people who got played on the radio or TV this month. A certain percentage is allocated to be given to those people who played this month. The rest goes into a kitty, and sometime near the end of the year or frequently during the year, that money is divided up amongst all the members of BMI or ASCAP for that particular membership year. So even though your record never played on the radio, the fellow who wrote your record does get some money out of it at the end of the year because he's a member of BMI or ASCAP.
Depending on the number of records you put out.
Yes, right. It depends on the number. A fellow that only has put out one record is obviously going to receive less royalties than someone who's recorded 20 records.
All right, going back to your scenario here. Question. A lot of us do weekends, and a lot of us do after parties. As long as the after party is part of the square dance activity, am I asking the same question? Yeah.
Remember earlier I said something about a lot of this is going to have to be at your definition, not ours, okay?
Okay.
Maybe I could help you by saying I know of no BMI or ASCAP reps that work after 8 o'clock at night. All right.
Well,
yeah, some of you may have seen one at 9:30 or 10 o'clock or something like that. But I'm sure they're out there. But pardon?
Yeah.
Now, one question that hasn't come up yet, which surprises me, is the use of live music. Last 3 or 4 years, the National Convention has used live music. The Ghostwriters, the Liberty Band. They pay a separate license fee. It runs about $200 a day to license a live music band. Some of you perform to live music sometimes during the year. As long as your performance to live music is not scheduled, and it's not a repeat thing. In other words, if your club has live music every Friday night, they should have that separately licensed. If they do it once a year, an infrequent use of live music, we are covered with the CALLERLAB agreement for that one live music night. If your club schedules 3 of them a year, and it's always the 4th Saturday of May, October, and December, they now have a schedule, and they're not covered. So the occasional use or the infrequent use of live music, your license will protect the club for that.
Could you finish your discussion on the round dance moves? Stop before you finish that.
Would you get up and remind me, Jim, on the phone, on the tape, so everybody knows?
I'm sorry. Could you finish your discussion when you said you talked to ASCAP and BMI about round dancing?
Sure,
and all that?
Sure. When I pointed out the fact that we were performing music, and it shouldn't make any difference as to whether or not we were dancing a line dance or a square dance or a round dance to that music, their biggest concern was not the dance steps we were doing, but the fact that both BMI especially has a very large country western, what they call a catalog. In other words, they may license 1 million songs, and the greater majority of those are country western. Different organizations work with different kinds of music. CSAC licenses classical music. BMI primarily country western music. ASCAP primarily easy listening and rock type music. So BMI has a very extensive country music catalog, and they feel that since we are a country music organization, that they want to protect that catalog and gain as much royalties as they can for the country western songwriters and producers and authors and so forth. So that's why they weren't particularly eager to learn about the types of steps we do to the music, only the types of records we use for the music, whether they be pop records or record producer, square dance record producer type records. Does that answer the question as to why I couldn't convince BMI and ASCAP that round dancing steps are already defined as country western? They didn't care about the steps, they cared about the music that we used.
Why couldn't we call country western or round dancing?
You can. Remember when we first started licensing, we had the argument of festival. Festival brought to their eyes huge dollar signs because festivals were 20,000 or more people in one place at one time. We finally educated them that festivals can be 3 squares on a Saturday afternoon if we called our event a festival. They're willing to accept that now. Give us some time. I'm sure that a year from now they will accept country western dancing as part of the square dance activity, and we'll just need one license. But we're still in a learning curve. We still need to convince them that all the steps are already defined and already licensed through either Round-a-Lab or CALLERLAB. And we may get it, we may not. Again, it depends on how much they want to protect that country western catalog of theirs.
Dave Harry, Washington. You just raised a red flag with the live music situation. I am a square dance caller and live music at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I fall in on this?
Who's the sponsor? Do you hire the band?
I am the band.
You are the band.
I hire the band. It's me and my wife. I mean, you're looking at the live music right now.
I'm afraid your license does not cover that. I doubt if you'd ever have any trouble with it because you're doing it at a square dance event.
Right.
But technically, according to the terms of our agreement, your club is not covered for that aspect.
Okay.
He erased his name off the tape. Are you a Joe Louis type? You have one accordion and maybe a drum that you kick with your heel or something? Do you do this live music at the same club every week or every 2 weeks? No. So, okay. If you do it for the Boots and Saddles tonight and the Bells and Bows tomorrow night and in a different club the third night and a different club the fourth night, now you're dealing with the occasional use at a particular club. Yeah, you're covered that way. Because now you have many different clubs hiring your expertise. You're not doing the same thing. You're not a regularly scheduled event at a particular club. Any other questions? Yes. Today, you can. Pardon? No, it's just an understanding that we have reached with BMI and ASCAP that to us the term festival does not raise a red flag of thousands of dancers out in a field someplace. Right, they do understand that. Canada has a very special agreement with SOCAN. SOCAN, which is the licensing arm of the Canadian government, agrees or feels that the 45 RPM record is obsolete. It's a dead technology. They have given all Canadian callers the go-ahead to use as many 45 RPM records as you would care to. You need no license. Now, even though BMI and ASCAP probably have an affiliate somewhere in Canada, so far we haven't learned. See, when I call BMI and ASCAP, they tell me they have an affiliate in Canada. No one in Canada can tell me who they are, who that affiliate is. So right now, Canadian callers are home free with the agreement that SOCAN came along with about a year now or a year and a half ago.
Can we enforce the registration?
Yes, next question.
Your question was about festivals. I have, since '91, arranged the paperwork for the Washington State Festival, and it's you pay per person per day. So that's where they've gotten the numbers, and the numbers don't mean anything to them anymore. But it's per person per day.
Yeah, and it's pennies. Right? Less than a dime a person a day will license you through both BMI and ASCAP. It's the paperwork that you have to go through. Our experience lately has been that you call them, you tell them you're having an event, you're expecting 4,500 people. They put your name in a book, and they expect you to call back after your event and report on how many you actually had. In some cases, we've heard where they actually collected an amount of money based on your estimate, and then after the event, they went back and audited that and either billed you for some more or paid you back some amount. And it's not consistent across the U.S.
The reason I asked, we changed the name of a ground dance festival, and we were controlling about 200
Does it draw more people now that you changed the name from festival to party? Okay. Yeah. It was a necessary move 3 years ago. But today you can go back to that name and you won't raise any red flags with either BMI or ASCAP. Yes, you would have gotten it back had you overpaid. They're really not out to rob anyone. They're out to do the best they can for their members, which is exactly what we're trying to do. It's the best we can for our members. Doris?
Yes. I wanted to ask a question. I had heard from other people that if you tape a record that's going to go out of print and you don't want to ruin it, and your record is in your case and you use the tape, it is still legal. Is that correct?
No, I'm sorry, it isn't. No. That's, again, synchronization rights, which is what they refer to it as in the business. Now, taping of any kind, there is one taping situation that you can get away with. If you regularly hire a caller who has a license, and it's December 16th, and there's 16 inches of snow on the ground, the caller is driving in from 200 miles away and he just can't get there, and you want to go ahead with your dance anyway, and you happen to have a tape of him. When he cancels out, you have done your best to meet with the letter of the law. You have hired a licensed caller repeatedly throughout the year. No one is going to fault you for using a tape that night in his place because he just couldn't get there. BMI nor ASCAP, neither one are out to make enemies. BMI and ASCAP would never fault you for entertaining shut-ins at a nursing home, because it's awfully bad press for them to haul in a caller that took 2 squares of dancers up to a nursing home and to entertain the people. So those kinds of things, yeah, your license covers you. If you didn't have a license, there wouldn't be very much said by anyone. Even the author probably of the songs you used would say, "You did nice, Charlie."
There's another taping incident which the Harry Fox Agency doesn't even get involved with. Yeah, that's an audition tape. Mm-hmm. If a caller does something and uses music on an audition tape, they have no interest in it at all.
Right, because you're not performing music, you are using that to sell yourself. It is a marketing tool, not the performance of music. That's correct. Thank you, Jim. Does anyone want to talk about insurance, or do we need to have some more questions on music licensing?
How much insurance have we got now?
How much what?
How much have we got?
In insurance, you have $2 million. Yeah. $2 million, what it's called, we have a $1 million policy with a $1 million umbrella. That means you're covered for up to $2 million a year, but only $1 million per incident. Okay, in other words, you can have 2 incidents in 1 year, and you'll still be covered with $2 million worth of liability.
Is that the association or individual?
That is individual callers. Every caller that is a member of IBM in the U.S., because we can't write insurance in Canada or overseas yet, has a $2 million policy. Yeah.
Might as well ask it up here. On the insurance coverage, does that cover me to an event, at an event, from an event, only during the event? What happens if I call and queue and it happens during the queuing portion of the event as opposed to the calling portion of the event?
You're covered just like the BMI and ASCAP license for any square dance related event. In fact, the insurance is even broader than BMI and ASCAP. If they can construe in any way that you're doing something related to square dancing, such as an after party at a campout, you're covered. You are not covered going to or from an event. You have really three policies. You've got the liability policy, $2 million, right? And that is for if someone sues you. If someone falls on the floor in front of you, don't rush out there and say, "Oh, I have insurance, file a claim." You may never be sued, and it wasn't your fault. You didn't. I hope you didn't say, "Y'all jump up and y'all fall down." Right? Dancers have to accept some responsibility for their actions. And unless you misstate the situation by telling them that you have an insurance, you're basically saying to them, "Go ahead and sue me because I'm going to cover you." That's not a good thing to do. That is your liability policy. It can cover anything at an event. Now, if a dancer walks through a glass window or a door or slips on a floor, you can be brought into the suit, just like the building will be sued, the manufacturer of the doorknobs, the person who made the broom, the janitor that wasn't there. They're all going to be called in the suit. And each of you will have your own insurance policy that will protect you from those kinds of things, protect you from those suits. You have a second policy, which is part of that group liability policy, which is medical in case you get hurt at a dance. You're calling away and a dancer comes up on the stage and leans against your yak stack. And the next thing you know, you got a big gash in your head where the yak stack fell. Your medical insurance covers that. $10,000. It's called AD&T, accidental death and I'm sorry, no, this is the medical portion of the liability policy, up to $10,000 for that. If you slip coming up or off of the stage and hurt yourself, you have that coverage. That's secondary coverage, right? Your homeowners or your whatever other health insurance you have pays first. If there's anything left above that, then it can be sent to our insurance company. Anytime there is an accident of any kind at your dance, you should call the insurance company and file an incident report. If a dancer hurts themselves outside on the sidewalk and you know about it, you should call the insurance company and just let them know that something happened at your dance that might result in a legal activity somewhere down the line. Pardon? Yes, I still would if I were you. Even if the club is sponsoring the dance, I would report the incident. Let me give you a reason why. We had an incident that occurred in November of 1990. The fellow didn't report the accident for 2 years. When he reported the accident, he was told by the insurance company, "I'm sorry, but according to the terms of our agreement, of which you received a certificate of insurance, all accidents have to be reported within 90 days." Now, it's easy, especially in a lawsuit. You may not even know you're being sued for 2-3 years after the event occurs. So the sooner you let the insurance company know that an incident occurred at your square dance, the better protected you will be if someone does come along later and file a suit. All right, let me finish with the rest of the coverage, and then I'll be up to questions. You have another part of your policies down at the bottom of your certificate of insurance called accidental death and dismemberment. Okay? That is coverage for you, not the dancer. And that one does cover you to or from a square dance. The liability and the other medical doesn't, but the AD&D does. If you should have an auto accident, lose a hand, sight of an eye, or something like that. Again, secondary insurance. Everybody else pays first if anything is left. Or if there is no other insurance, then it is primary insurance. Okay? Now we can have some questions.
All right, I've got two questions then. Most clubs across the country are going to be insured through United Square Dancers of America. Their insurance comes through the same agency as that of CALLERLAB, correct?
Not as far as I know. We are with A.H. Wohler's company.
USDA uses Wohler's also.
Then they have switched their insurance, yeah.
Okay. Now, which policy would come into play first, the club's USDA or the caller's?
That would have to be determined in a court for that specific action, because both our policies are secondary insurance.
Okay.
So.
And then, how would I put this? Would the clubs be covered in the same fashion with the insurance as it is with music licensing if the club does not have insurance? I think the club would be crazy not to.
A club that does that is crazy if they don't have insurance of some kind.
If the club doesn't and the caller does and something happens, what are the limitations there?
There are none. In a suit, anybody can sue anybody and everything else. There's no one is going to draw a line and say, I'm sorry, but you can't sue him. But you can sue him and her and it. All right? Yeah. Yeah, your insurance does not cover the club with one exception. If a hall, a rec hall, a church, asks you for a certificate of additional insured, they are basically asking you to add their name to your policy. Right? And this is free. You can get this for anybody that asks. You call A.H. Wohler's insurance company and say, I need a certificate of additional insured for school district number 535 in El Puente or somewhere. And A.H. Wohler's will send out a policy basically adding them to your insurance policy. So now they have $1 million coverage, and so do you. If someone at a dance should file a suit, you're covered, so is that hall that was named additionally with you.
Okay, now I forgot what the other question was that I was going to ask now. Call or run club situation. What if it's a call or run club?
Same situation. You the caller, are insured. Okay. The hall is not unless they specifically ask for it. Okay. The dancers are not because our insurance policy doesn't cover the dancers. Okay. Other than in the case of a filing an action against you. Chuck?
Do we call the home office or do we call A.H. Walters?
Call A.H. Walters directly, or Wohlers, W-O-H-L-E-R-S.
Do you have the phone number?
The phone number is on the front of every issue of direction.
Okay.
Down at the very bottom it says insurance company. It's an 800 number. They would rather you call than not. They'd rather that you report every incident, and they have been very good with working with us. The last company we had to send out the certificates of insurance. We had to send out the certificates of additional insured. With Wohlers, all you have to do is call them, and the next day they mail out the certificates. They can do it a lot faster than the home office could. Pardon? Yeah, in case where you need one for a school district or something and you need it tomorrow night, they will fax it to you. Yes?
Two questions. In the additional insured certificate, is this going to be dated? Do you have to give them specific dates? If I ask for one which will protect my hall or my club, is this going to be dated, or is it going to be for the full year?
It goes to a person or a governmental entity, such as a school district or a park and rec department, and it can cover a specific event, or it can cover your whole year's activities.
Okay. Second question. This says it's not going to cover us if we are at a campground.
Yeah, we're looking into that.
Our club goes on a specific camp out. The caller takes his equipment. He's going to be there and do the calling.
We have the insurance company right now is looking into that. They are supposed to come up and give us an answer in the very near future. We'll publish the answer that we get in the next available issue of Direction.
Thank you.
Because we spotted that as well in our policy this year and started asking questions, and they didn't have an immediate answer for us.
George, you have the same thing we have on the to and from. When you leave, you go home. You don't stop.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, don't take a detour. Any other questions? Sorry, Chuck? Oh, when we say that you're covered going to or from a square dance, you can't leave home at 6 o'clock for an 8:30 dance and do all your errands on the way there. Okay? This is basically direct line to, direct line from. Because it's hard to say you're on your way to a square dance if your square dance is a half an hour away and you left at 5:30. Stop at the hardware store. Pardon, right. I suppose you could, as long as you didn't go out of your way, some great distance to do it. Yeah. USDA does not cover you for that situation. Yeah, you can't expect much insurance for $13.50 a year. All right. This year was $15, but we have had members who canceled. One member owned a mobile home park. When he found that he had insurance through CALLERLAB, he canceled his mobile home park insurance, assuming that CALLERLAB would cover him. Keep in mind, $15 worth of insurance is not is a heck of a deal if it'll cover your mobile home park and your house and your motor home. Any other questions? If not, I thank you very much. Thank you for attending. If you have further questions that you would really like to talk informal, we'll take those up after the tape is shut off.